All right, so my name is Alexandrea Miller, and I chose Asperger's syndrome as my presentation. So, Asperger's syndrome has been included with autism spectrum disorder since May 2013. The difference between Asperger's and autism is that there is no intellectual or language impairment in Asperger's syndrome. Children with Asperger's typically have an average or above average IQ. There is no proof that the terms high functioning or low functioning terms are real when it comes to being on the spectrum. Asperger's is part of a spectrum in which someone cannot be identified as high or low functioning. In fact, some people can take offense to being called either of those terms. The picture on the screen um, shows us that the spectrum is not a linear spectrum where someone can be less or more. The spectrum is more of a color wheel. So as you can see, social differences can be red, but emotional regulation can be green, and those are complete different, um, like different statistics or different categories for them. And again, terms like high functioning, low functioning, and Asperger are harmful, and outdated. Um, Again, the color wheel represents the spectrum. Not everyone has the same symptoms when diagnosed with the disorder. All right, so what do you look for in children with Asperger's syndrome? Children with Asperger's usually have a difficult time with social interactions, they behave differently, and have repetitive thinking patterns. Um, there is no language delay in children with Asperger's syndrome. They do have a minimal social interactions, um, obsessions with one or two specific subjects, have a hard time managing emotions, sometimes leading to verbal or behavioral outbursts. Those can also be self-injurious behaviors or tantrums. Typically, children with Asperger's are not able to read facial expressions or understand emotional behaviors of others. This can be sarcasm, humor, or irony. It can also be not being able to understand if someone is either unhappy or excited. So, but there are some concerns. Since children with Asperger's syndrome do not have intellectual or language impairments, there are concerns in delayed motor skill development. Delayed motor skill development can be anything from a child having a hard time holding objects correctly or being able to throw a ball. There can be sensory issues for the child with the disorder. This can mean the child is sensitive to bright lights, loud noises, the feeling of different textures of objects. There are different types of outbursts. As mentioned earlier, there can be verbal or behavioral outbursts, self-interest behaviors, or tantrums. This usually happens when a child with Asperger's has a hard time with regulating their emotions in a stressful situation. These outbursts can be shown as physical or non-physical. So here's some strategies and tips for families. According to Shay Brogren's The 5 Best Teaching Strategies for Autism, here are a few strategies that stood out to me. Support routines and transitions. Using a daily or weekly schedule, just like the picture on the right, um, will help the child in following routines. Setting a timer for a couple minutes between daily tasks can help with the child transition smoother into the next task. For me personally, I found it helpful to use a physical monthly calendar where I can write everything down, like work schedules, appointments, and due dates. I had a hard time using planners and online calendars, so this made it easier for me to have a set routine every day. Incorporate sensory tools. I mentioned earlier that children with Asperger's may have sensory issues. Using tools like noise canceling headphones, fidgets, or even weighted blankets can help with overstimulation. I use a weighted blanket throughout the day because it provides deep pressure therapy, or known as DPT, to help me stay relaxed. I use noise canceling headphones when I go to places that I know will be crowded and loud, but mainly it's to be connected to my phone. I even have fidgets when I feel uncomfortable or overstimulated to help me keep me busy. Support social skill practices. Practicing social skills can be anything. At home, a child can practice social skills by using the words please and thank you, practicing facial expressions, or playing a game of charades. Here are some tips and strategies for educators. And according to Wendy Taylor's classroom strategies for students with Asperger's, here are a few examples of ways educators can support a child. Being consistent in the classroom. A consistent classroom schedule will help the student know what to expect next. This can include when attendance is going to be taken, what time a class subject is going to start, or even when lunch is. De-escalate situations. Certain situations that occur in the classroom, which can cause irritation to the child, can increase the chances of a meltdown. Have a place designated for a child to cool down and process their thoughts. Most school counseling offices can provide steps to take to help reduce the chances of a meltdown. And lastly, check in on the child. One way to make sure the child is doing all right in class is to have daily check-ins. By doing this, you'll be able to know if the child is on task or having a hard time understanding that task. The teacher can also monitor the behavior of the child. This gives the child the opportunity to express how they are feeling, and by doing so, the teacher is able to provide the steps needed. The picture on the right is a daily progress report. So this can be used throughout the day when it comes to behavior or schoolwork, when it comes to staying on task, or how well that student is able to socialize. Um, there can be comments, there's parent signatures, everything that is needed for a young child that has Asperger's syndrome. Here are some resources for families. Organizations such as Autism Speaks can provide information about the disorder using a resource guide for families looking for services like cognitive behavioral therapy, social skills training classes, speech therapy, psychoactive medicines, and physical and occupational therapy. All these resources can be found on the Autism Speaks website using the resource guide to find the closest location near you. Here are some resources for educators. In the classroom, educators can use tools and worksheets from free online sources such as Autism Classroom Resources. Autism Classroom Resources provide free tools, tips, and worksheets designed to be in special education classrooms, but also general education classrooms if you have a student on Asperger's or the autism spectrum and just needs an easier, worksheet to work with. Practical Autism Resources. This website has free printable sheets for teachers to use to help assess a student with Asperger's syndrome, as well as worksheets for the student. Educate Autism. The goal of this website is to provide educators with printable worksheets to use in the classroom, which can be used to complete subject activities. All right, thank you for listening to my presentation.